With the latest update to War Thunder, we have received a new squadron vehicle. Surprisingly, a top tier main battle tank in the German territory. This is the Polish Leopard 2PL, a modern upgrade of the Leopard 2A4. While the tank does receive several new features, as well as additional applique armour, it is still a Leopard 2A4 at heart. So just how well does it do in the absolute cauldron of pain that is top tier ground forces? Alright lads, today I'm going to be talking about the weapons performance and playstyle of the Leopard 2PL. Starting as always with the basics, this vehicle is a rank 7 battle rating 10.7 main battle tank located in the German territory. Being a rank 7 squadron vehicle, it will be efficient at researching all the vehicles between the ranks of 6 and 7. To unlock this tank, you will have to grind out 520,000 squadron points, which will take several months of playing in a squadron. After this grind, you will still have to purchase the tank for a cost of 1,220,000 silver lions. Alternatively, you can purchase the vehicle for a cost of 7,800 golden eagles. Regardless of however you purchase the tank, the vehicle will come stock and will have to be fully upgraded to maximise its performance. But wait, there's more. You will then still have to pay a crew train cost of 290,000 silver lions. That's it for mandatory purchases, but optionally, you can purchase the expert and ace qualifications for the tank, costing 1,080,000 silver lions and 2,800 golden eagles respectively. One upside of this being a squadron vehicle is that the tank has a relatively low repair cost, at least by top tier standards, at only 4,240 silver lions. Going on to the rewards, and the 2PL has a base modifier of 2.32, giving you an RP modifier of 232% with a free-to-play account and 464% with a premium account. You also have a base silver line modifier of 1.3. Both the other Leopard 2A5 and the 2A6 have a modifier of 1.5, so this is slightly lower. Regardless, it gives you a base silver line modifier of 130% with a free-to-play account and 195% with a premium account. In terms of customization, there are several camouflages available to purchase for Golden Eagles, as well as one available on the Gaijin marketplace. In terms of lineups, top tier Germany is packed with competitive vehicles, ranging from the Leopard 2A5 and 2A6, the Leopard 2A4 and the 2K, as well as auxiliary vehicles such as the Radkampfwagen, TAM2C and the Flarak Rad, all of which constitute a very powerful lineup. In this video we're going to cover the mobility, armour and firepower of the vehicle before finishing with a conclusion. If you do enjoy these sorts of reviews, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing lads. Okay, so starting as always with the engine and performance, and just like the Leopard 2A4, the 2PL is powered by an engine producing 1,500 horsepower. However, due to the 2PL weighing slightly more, at 59.2 tonnes, the vehicle has a lower power to weight ratio, with 25.3 horsepower per tonne. This is pretty good, and gives you around the same levels of mobility as a Leopard 2A5, but it is overall less agile than the nimble 2A4. Moving on to the transmission, and we can see that the Leo has a top speed of 68 km per hour, and with a rather high power to weight ratio, you do reach that top speed pretty quickly. The tank also has a respectable reverse speed of 31 km per hour. These decent top speeds, both forward and reverse, give you pretty good tactical mobility. You can easily push and then pull back over hills and around ridgelines. Being a top tier NATO main battle tank, the Leopard naturally has the ability to neutral steer, giving the 2PL excellent mobility and manoeuvrability at least by Soviet standards. But compared to some of the other NATO tanks, it does feel a little bit sluggish, especially at low speeds. The increased weight of the tank makes it feel a little heavy when trying to traverse around the hull. Overall, the Leopard 2PL does feel a little bloated when manoeuvring, but in terms of speed and power, the tank performs pretty well. As I said earlier, it has the same decent performance as a Leopard 2A5. While fast enough to meet enemy tanks in the centre of the map, it doesn't have enough mobility to give you a strategical advantage. Okay, moving on to the armour and survivability, and the first thing to mention is that the 2PL has a crew of 4 men, and just like the other Leopards, conveniently for the enemy, the driver, gunner and commander are all lined up, making you an easy kill if a round actually penetrates the left hand side of the vehicle. Just like the M1 Abrams series of tanks, the 2PL has blow-up panels in the turret bustle. This is where your ammunition is stored. However, unlike the Abrams which stores all of its ammunition in the turret, the Leopard can only carry 15 rounds in this bustle, with the remaining rounds being stored in the hull to the right of the driver. This means that if you take more than 16 rounds into a game, it will leave you incredibly prone to magazine detonations if your round actually penetrates your armour. Unlike the modern Leopard 2A5 and A6, the PL variant does not get add-on triangular spaced armour. Instead, it gets composite armour blocks. This has pros and cons. On one hand, these composite blocks provide tremendous protection against chemical warheads, such as heat effects and missiles. but it doesn't really offer any enhanced protection against kinetic energy projectiles. Alright, so moving on to the ammo performance itself, and to test this, we'll be using the 3BM42 Mango round as fired by the T80U. Starting as always with the lower frontal plate, and we have between 180 and 200mm of armour, and when we move to the upper frontal plate, our protection improves slightly, up to around 300mm of armour. This is very poor for a battle rating 10.7 vehicle, and this is to be expected, as the 2PL uses the chassis of the Leopard 204, a very early variant of the Leopard 2. If we move up to the turret, the cheeks are surprisingly good, providing over 700mm of armour in some places, but there are major weak spots. Firstly, we have the gun breach, a common weak spot for all main battle tanks, but just like the Leopard 204, the breach of this tank is massive, and takes up over half of the turret front. While the protection values do vary, you can expect around 200 to 300mm of armour on the turret. This should be enough to save you from early 105mm ammunition, but it stands no chance of protecting you against the high velocity 120mm cannons at top tier. Another weak spot is the gunner's sight. It provides around 360mm of armour, but both your gunner and commander are located directly behind this. Taking around here will prevent you from returning fire, and due to it providing less than 400mm of armour, all of the current top tier main battle tanks can easily penetrate it. So if you want to kill the Leopard 2PL frontally, shoot it here in the gunner sight, or here on the lower hull, as it should kill the driver, gunner and commander in a single round. But if we turn the camera to the side of the vehicle, then initially we have around 70mm of armour protection at the start of the hull, mainly due to the add-on composite blocks. Moving further down the length of the hull, and protection drops again down to between 30 and 60mm of armour. If we move up to the turret, and initially you have around 400mm of armour against a late tier Soviet shell. Again, this is due to the add-on composite armour extending around the side of the turret. When this composite armour stops, protection drops down to around 270mm of armour, and around the turret bustle, protection drops again, down to less than 60mm of armour. And finally, the rear of the turret provides 30mm of armour, and the rear of the hull provides just 22mm of armour. Overall, the Leopard 2PL is best compared to the Leopard 205. It has similar levels of mobility, as well as raw armour levels. While the turret of the 2PL is impressive, it has more weak spots than the 205, and has a much larger gun breach. To be honest though, the tank is fairly well protected, and as long as you aren't carrying a lot of excess ammunition, it rarely dies in a single hit. Really, we ricocheted off the upper frontal plate of a... Are you Moving on to the weapons and ammunition, and just like the other Leopards in game, it is armed with the Rheinmetall 120mm cannon. Just like the Leopard 204 on which the PL is based, it uses the L44 variant. Being a modern vehicle, the gun is fully stabilised in both the vertical and horizontal planes. The 2PL also has the NATO standard 20 degrees of gun elevation and a slightly below average 9 degrees of gun depression. You can carry 42 rounds in total, with 15 of those rounds being classed as first stage ammunition stored in the turret bustle. As I mentioned earlier, carrying any more than 16 rounds into a battle means your ammunition is stored in the hull, making it very vulnerable. So taking a look at the reloading skill under the loader section, and we can see you have a base reload speed of 7.8 seconds, and with an ace crew, that drops down to 6 seconds. This reload rate is around average for top tier. You do beat the Soviet 7.1 second autoloader, but the British Challenger has a reload speed of 5 seconds, and the Japanese Type 90 has a reload speed of 4 seconds. Moving on to the targeting skill under the gunner section, and we can see you have a base turret rotation speed of 28 degrees per second, which rises to 40 degrees per second with an ace crew. We next move to the modifications, and I want to point out that this tank gets access to a laser rangefinder, as well as second generation thermals for both the gunner and commander's sights. This will be a big help in simulator and realistic battles, as it allows you to rapidly acquire targets in poor visibility. As well as these thermals, you also get a nice wide field of view in the gunner sight, as well as a base 4x zoom and an optional 12x zoom. Moving on to the ammunition, and we have 4 rounds available, 1 stock and 3 unlockable. Your stock round is the DM12A1 heater fast shell. It travels at a muzzle velocity of 1140 meters per second and can penetrate 480mm of flat armour. And against armour angled at 60 degrees, it can still penetrate 240mm of armour. It's a pretty decent stock shell, but at battle rating 10.7, most opponents will be able to tank it. Luckily for you, you have a tier 1 APF SDS round. This is the DM23 shell, and should be unlocked as soon as you have parts and FPE. This is the upgraded round on the earlier Leopard 2A4. Travelling at 1,640 meters per second, it is capable of penetrating 410 millimeters of flat armour, and against armouring good at 60 degrees, it is still capable of punching through 237 millimeters of armour. This will struggle to penetrate the upper frontal plates of the Soviet main battle tanks, but it is much better than the Heat FS round for your stock grind. Your next unlockable round is the DM11 shell. This is a high explosive fin stabilised round. It travels at a muzzle velocity of 950 meters per second and can penetrate 37 millimeters of armour at all angles and ranges. It contains 3.9 kilograms of TNT filler, giving it very good damage against lightly armoured parts of a tank. Your last unlockable round is the DM33 shell. This is the top shell on the old Leopard 2A5 and is still competitive in top tier, being able to penetrate 481mm of flat armour, and against armouring good at 60 degrees, it still manages a respectable 278mm of armour penetration. As I said, this is still more than enough to penetrate most Soviet tanks, and pretty much all of the other NATO vehicles, so the performance of this round shouldn't get shrugged off just because of the better performance of the newer DM53 round. Apart from the main gun, the 2PL also has a coaxially mounted rifle caliber machine gun, as well as a pintle mounted rifle caliber machine gun. Overall, the firepower of the 2PL is exactly the same as the Leopard 2A5, except with better thermal imaging. It's hard to be critical of this though, as the 2A5 is still a lethal vehicle, and seeing as the 2PL has the same mobility, firepower and practically the same armour, the 2PL is essentially just a better looking 2A5. To conclude, the Leopard 2PL is basically just a Leopard 2A5 with slightly better thermal imaging. While its armoured turret does look cool, its performance in game isn't particularly effective against a common APF SDS round. This lack of turret armour, combined with the 2A4 hull, leaves the tank less protected than the 2A5, but with similar levels of mobility and firepower. Despite not being a premium, it is very much comparable to the T-72AV and the T-72B. Both have decent mobility and firepower, except the T-72B has stronger armour, whereas the premium AV trades armour for thermal imaging. For the outright cost of nearly 8,000 Golden Eagles, I can't really recommend people go out and buy the tank. If you are already at top tier Germany, just play the Leopard 2A5 or the 2A6. If you already have the Leopard A1A1 L44, just play that. The only reason to purchase the 2PL is if you just want to skip the grind to top tier, something which I would never recommend, mainly because you skip the lessons you learn along the way. Top tier is vastly different from rank 2 and 3 battles, and jumping straight into it will likely result in you being vastly outmatched by more highly skilled opponents. For grinding this tank with squadron points, then sure, it's a great tank, although it will take you a long time to grind it, several months at least. But I cannot fault the tank really, it's more than good enough for a decent player to get good results with, and it shouldn't go down to 10.3 in my opinion. No one thinks the 2A5 should be 10.3, so why should this thing be? Overall, I do like this tank, but I'm not sure I'd spend the best part of $50 unlocking it early. Alright lads, thank you very much for watching this video. What do you guys think about this vehicle? If you have any questions or suggestions to improve the channel, then please feel free to leave a comment below. I now have community memberships enabled for the channel. If you'd like access to behind the scenes footage, as well as access to content a few hours early, then please do consider becoming a member. I'd also like to mention that I now have a Twitch account, where I stream pretty frequently, so if you'd like to follow me there, my Twitch handle is SAKO Sniper, the same as this YouTube channel. But if you do enjoy these sorts of reviews, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. But more importantly lads, I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much for watching.